So I grew up in the South Shore of Long Island, and camp was a very big deal for people that lived on the South Shore. I didn't know really what it was all about, but my parents said, you have to go to day camp. And I was like, wow, how cool of an experience is that? They registered me for Rolling River Day Camp in Oceanside, New York. And it was about 15 minutes away from where I grew up. And I didn't know what to expect. I was like, wow, like, are the kids gonna like me? Am I going to learn a lot? Probably I was in like first or second grade that I entered in. And I was just super excited to go. So I go in there and they had everything, all these different activities, from cooking to computer classes to canoeing and kayaking. They had boating, they had soccer, miniature golf, baseball, basketball. I went there as a kid. And then when I was in about 8th grade, I had the opportunity to become a CIT and then become a counselor. And I said, wow, how cool is that? The camp that I went to as a kid, I now am going to become a counselor at the camp. I applied to become a CIT and a counselor about 8th, 9th grade. I remember the first day I was a counselor for first graders. And I didn't know what to expect. I was a little bit nervous. What is camp all about? It's about, you know, having fun and meeting people. So I wanted to make sure that these campers really had a great experience overall, learning, meeting people, creating friendships, and long-lasting friendships. But I still remember that first day, and it was super hot. It was just, I was like drenched. I had the Rolling River t-shirt on, and it was blue and white shirt. And I remember when I went to orientation, I got like 4 or 5 shirts, and they said you have to switch it up often because it's going to be a very hot summer. And I also had a change of a couple of bathing suits because obviously in camp you have multiple times during the day, you have swim. And I remember one of the first activities we played was Gaga. Gaga is a game whereby you have this dodgeball that you can't pick it up from the ground. So what you have to do is you have to move the ball on the ground, and you have to hit the ball, and you have to try to hit someone in the shin. And that was the purpose of the game. It was like a form of dodgeball, but you couldn't pick up the ball and hit someone. One activity that I really actually enjoyed, probably the best, was cooking. When I was 8th, 9th grade, I think that I really fell in love with cooking and food. And I remember the cooking counselor at the time, super nice. She always had this apron on, and it was like a white apron, and it would be like dirty, and it would have like flour on it, it would have chocolate on it, caramel on it. And I still remember my favorite thing that I made in camp was something called the dirt cup. And what the dirt cup was it was chocolate pudding with cookie crunch with a gummy worm on it. And it was so delicious, it was so good. I remember each year that I would work at the camp, I'd always tell the camp cooking counselor, when are you making dirt cups this year? And it's so funny, you know, just talking about generations of going to that camp and then working at the camp for numerous years. Now my nephew, who's 5 years old, is at that camp, and I actually picked him up from camp, and he actually made dirt cup the other day. Isn't that a full circle of life? That I started out when I was in 1st grade, then I became a counselor in 8th grade, and now my nephew that's 5 years old is now attending, and I'm sure he's going to be a counselor there one day. I remember getting an email at the beginning of the summer saying that in August we're having a Rolling River Alumni Happy Hour, and that's for alumni of the campers, alumni CITs, alumni counselors. And I said, how cool is that? Am I going to see my campers that are all grown up 20 years later? I showed up, and there was this guy that looked so familiar. I didn't like put 2 and 2 together, and I went up to him and I introduced myself, and he said, Richard, you were my counselor when I was in 1st grade. And I said, really? And he mentioned his name, and I said, I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, I still remember when I was your counselor, and I remember in 1st grade he just needed a little help in basketball, you know, more than maybe some of the other campers. And I remember I taught him a technique of holding the ball like a certain way. He was a lefty, right? And I'm actually a righty. I taught him left-handed. He says, do you remember that time that in 1st grade I taught him basketball? And I said, I do remember that. So it was so cool, like showing up that day. And I actually saw 2 or 3 other campers that same day on the alumni return day. And it was so cool to see what they're doing. I had a different hairstyle back then, but they did remember me. We talked about some of the great times we had and where some of their friends that were in camp, what they're doing today. And it was just a great, really fun evening. Just a really awesome experience, you know, working at the camp and connecting with alumni that are now professionals in the New York area, and just super awesome.